Welcome to Book Summary Podcast, your gateway to personal transformation. Each episode delivers big ideas from the world's most impactful books on mindset, productivity, and success, all in just a few minutes. Ready to turn knowledge into action? Let's get started.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're the place you turn to when you want to go beyond the headlines, really dig into the sources, and get the insights you need. Today, we are absolutely diving deep into a giant of personal development. A book that's really shaped countless lives, countless careers. Just think about this for a second. What if? What if the real secret to, massive wealth, profound fulfillment wasn't just about grinding it out or catching a lucky break? What if it was more about a very specific mindset and applying a set of actionable principles, like really diligently? The title itself is, it's a bold claim, isn't it? Think and Grow Rich. It really grabs you. But the story behind how it came about and the principles packed inside, they're surprisingly deep. So today we're going to get into key excerpts from Napoleon Hill's really crucial work. And this book, it didn't just appear out of the blue. It landed right in the middle of one of the toughest times in American history, the Great Depression. Think about that context. Fear, doubt, this feeling of poverty, just everywhere. And then this book comes along with this really radical promise, abundance.
It completely challenged what everyone thought was possible back then.
It did. And what's really fascinating, I think, is the foundation of the book. It wasn't just Hill's ideas off the top of his head. No, it meticulously distilled lessons, insights from over 500 people who had achieved incredible wealth. 500. And this research, Hill claimed, was supposedly rooted in Andrew Carnegie's own sort of magic formula for making money. So you're right, it's not just a collection of nice sayings. It's presented as a whole philosophy of individual achievement, a structured path, not just, wishful thinking.
Exactly. And our mission today is to really understand that path.
Yeah.
We're going to explore these core proven steps to riches that Hill outlines very methodically. We'll connect these ideas, which are pretty powerful, to his own life story. And believe me, it was quite the roller coaster. Lots of ups, lots of downs. And ultimately, we want to see how these principles, which are almost a century old now, still seem incredibly relevant, maybe even perfectly aligned with today's knowledge economy.
Right.
And this deep dive, it isn't just about becoming a millionaire overnight, although, yeah, that's definitely part of the book's appeal, let's be honest. But really, at its core, it's about understanding that process, how ideas actually turn into reality, how you can build a mindset for success, and how to tap into your own potential to achieve, whatever your definite purpose is. Okay, so before we really get into the nuts and bolts of the philosophy itself, we absolutely have to talk about the man behind it all, Napoleon Hill. Because his journey leading up to writing Think and Grow Rich, it was anything but a smooth ride to wealth. It was really a series of pretty intense trials, setbacks, moments that would test anyone's commitment.
Oh, absolutely. The whole origin story of the book, Hill's entire life mission, really kicked off with a direct challenge from Andrew Carnegie himself. And this meeting, this crucial encounter, happened more than 25 years before the book was even published. Hill describes Carnegie as this canny, lovable old Scotsman who sort of carelessly tossed this secret, this idea, into Hill's mind when Hill was just a young, struggling journalist. Carnegie apparently watched him closely then, almost like a test, to see if he had the brains enough to understand the full significance of it all. And when Hill seemed to get it, Carnegie hit him with this huge task. Basically, would he commit 20 years or more, if needed to, preparing this formula, this philosophy, and taking it out to the world?
Wow, 20 years.
Yeah. The idea was to share it with people who, without this secret, might just live lives of quiet desperation, never hitting their full potential. Carnegie genuinely believed it should be available to everyone. He even thought it should be taught in schools, colleges. He thought it could revolutionize education, maybe even cut school time in half.
And young Hill, full of ambition, just said yes.
Apparently so. An emphatic yes. He jumped into what became this massive lifelong project. But those years in between, decades really, before the book came out, they were anything but easy. To support himself, his family, he did all sorts of things. A really diverse list of jobs.
Like what?
Well, he sold cars. Then he actually started a college just to teach other people how to sell cars better. He worked for a gas company's legal team. He promoted university extension courses. He invested in and ran a candy company, sold correspondence courses. It was just constant hustle, constant trying things out, and often, real financial struggle.
Wow. So he was really trying everything.
Like everything. His career did start to get a bit more traction, an upward swing, as he put it, around 1919, which, interestingly, was the year Carnegie died. He managed to find backers for a new national magazine, Hill's Golden Rule. It did pretty well. That led to Napoleon Hill's magazine, which he actually called a national monthly magazine of business philosophy. Very direct.
So he was building his brand.
Exactly. Plus, he was lecturing all over the country. He was slowly building this reputation as America's scholar of success. And the money from his earlier book, Law of Success, which was pretty expensive for the time, and his lecture fees, actually allowed him to buy this big estate up in the Catskills.
Okay, so things were looking up then.
For a while, yeah. He had this grand vision of starting the first Success University there, plus making it a family home. And for a bit, it really looked like it was validating everything, you know? All those years of struggle seemed to be paying off. His philosophy seemed to be working for him.
But then the Great Depression hit. 1929.
Yeah.
That must have just wiped him out.
Devastating blow. Absolutely devastating. The impact was immediate. Sales of Law of Success just dried up. His big estate in the Catskills foreclosed. He was right back to square one, basically. Huge personal blow, huge financial blow.
Yeah.
It even led to his divorce from his wife, Florence.
Wow. That's incredible. So he lived through this himself.
Right. And if you connect that personal experience, that devastating failure during the Depression, it wasn't just a private tragedy for him. It seems like it deeply, deeply cemented his belief in his own philosophy, especially that famous phrase of his.
Every failure carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater reward.
Exactly that. He didn't just preach it, he lived it. Right through that intense period, he turned that personal catastrophe into an even stronger belief system. It really highlights his idea that adversity is often just opportunity in disguise. You just have to look for the seed.
And it was right in the middle of all that personal chaos and the national crisis that he got this call from the government.
Yeah, an unexpected call to service. In 1933, he was almost 50, and he gets a call from the Roosevelt administration. They wanted him to advise the National Recovery Administration, the NRA, in its, quote, war against fear.
The war against fear.
That's how they framed it. And Hill jumped at the chance. What's amazing is he refused any salary. He saw it as his patriotic duty, to help the country recover. He even claimed later that he had quite a bit of input into FDR's famous fireside chats.
Really? The ones that reached millions of people?
That's what he claimed, helping to reassure all those fearful Americans.
So it was during this really intense time for him and the country that Think and Grow Rich finally happened.
Exactly. The manuscript was ready. He sent it off to his publisher, Albert Lewis Pelton. And Pelton, interestingly, had a slightly different title in mind. Something a bit more, commercial, maybe.
Oh, what was it?
Use your noodle to win more boodle.
Laughing slightly. No way. Seriously.
Seriously. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. The full title became Think and Grow Rich, teaching for the first time the famous Andrew Carnegie formula for money-making based upon the 13 proven steps to riches. Much better.
Much better. Captures the depth and the promise.
Right. And priced at $2.50, which was a fair bit of money back then.
Yeah, during the Depression.
Pelton, maybe a bit optimistically, ordered a first print run of 5,000 copies. They sold out in 3 weeks.
Wow.
The book just took off, became a national phenomenon, sold 1 million copies in just a few years. And that success finally allowed Hill to move to Florida, get a big house with his new wife, Rosa, even buy a Rolls Royce.
So here's the irony, right? He wasn't actually rich when he wrote the book teaching people how to get rich. He was struggling.
Precisely. And for Hill, that irony was the point. His own success, coming after applying the principles, was the proof. Proof that the philosophy worked if you stuck with it, if you practiced it faithfully. It would pay off eventually. Imagine how powerful that message was then during all that widespread fear, doubt, and poverty consciousness. It was pure hope, agency.
But his life didn't just smooth out after that. You said it was still a roller coaster?
It really was. He called it that himself. Recessions, depressions, wars. They kept impacting him, even after the book's success. There's one example from 1941. He had a follow-up book, Mental Dynamite, doing really well, selling like crazy. Then, boom. Paper rationing because of World War II, severely hit the reprints, just constant external challenges, even with his internal resilience.
Through all of that, though, his core message stayed the same.
Incredibly consistent, unwavering. It always came back to, our lives conform remarkably to our beliefs. Why not design a magnificent life built on consciously created ones? He truly believed it was no harder to think big than to think small. to focus on abundance rather than limitation. And he saw again and again that it's usually not life itself that defeats us permanently.
It's our own willingness to give up on the magic of believing.
Exactly. And coming from someone who rode such extreme highs and lows and consciously chose to see the lows as lessons, well, that message carries a lot of weight.
Okay, let's dive into the absolute bedrock of Hill's philosophy then. Desire. He says everything starts here, right? Everything man creates or acquires. But he's very specific. It's not just any old desire. It has to be a burning desire.
Absolutely. That distinction is critical. His idea of desire isn't just a vague hope or a passive wish. Not at all. He describes it as keen, pulsating, definite. It's not about wanting many things. It's about having one single, unwavering aim. An aim that just dominates your thoughts, your actions, so much so that it kind of crowds out everything else. It's this relentless focus energy pushing you forward.
And he uses his story to illustrate this, doesn't he? The Edwin C. Barnes story, going to see Edison.
Yes. An incredible example. Barnes shows up at Edison's lab, looking, as Hill puts it, like an ordinary tramp. But he doesn't ask for a job. He boldly announces he's there to go into business with the inventor, not for him.
Wow, the confidence.
Right. And he didn't even have money for the train fare. He traveled by blind baggage, basically stowed away on a freight train. He literally burned his bridges. There was no turning back. It was Edison or bust.
That detail, burning the bridges, that feels key.
It's absolutely key. It shows the intensity. Barnes wasn't just willing. He was eager to take any job, even menial work, as long as it got him one tiny step closer to his goal, partnering with Edison. And for 5 long years, nothing. No outward sign of progress, no hint his dream would come true. But Hill makes this crucial point. In his own mind, he was the partner of Edison every minute of the time.
He maintained the belief.
Relentlessly. His definite, dominating dream finally paid off when Edison needed someone to market his new dictaphone, and Barnes seized the chance. People later said he got a break, but they didn't see the years of unwavering desire and persistence behind it. They didn't see the cause.
It really is that burn your ships idea in action. Hill uses that analogy too, right? The warrior.
He does. The story of the warrior who sails to enemy territory, unloads his soldiers, and then gives the order, burn the ships, tells his men, you see the boats going up in smoke. That means that we cannot leave these shores alive unless we win. We now have no choice. We win or we perish.
And they won.
Of course they won. It perfectly illustrates that single-minded focus, that elimination of any possibility of retreat that Hill says is necessary to maintain a true burning desire to win. Total commitment.
Okay, so how do you translate that intensity into something practical? He gives steps, doesn't he? 6 steps.
Yes. 6 very definite, practical steps. They're designed specifically to transmute that intangible desire into actual tangible money, or whatever the goal is, and he presents them as precise instructions, not just loose suggestions, meant to be followed exactly.
All right, step 1, fix the exact amount of money you want. No vagueness allowed.
Right. Can't just say, I want a lot of money, you need a specific number. Hill hints there's a psychological power in that definiteness. It focuses the mind.
Step 2, determine exactly what you'll give in return. He's very clear. No such reality as something for nothing. It's about exchange.
Absolutely. Value for value. Step 3. Establish a definite date for when you intend to have that money. Adds urgency, accountability, keeps it from being someday.
Step 4, create a definite plan to get it. And this is crucial. Begin at once. Ready or not, just start executing the plan. No procrastination.
The act of starting is key. Step 5, write it all down. A clear, concise statement. The amount, the date, what you'll give in return, and the plan itself. Put it in writing.
And the final step. Step 6. This seems really important for embedding it. Read that statement aloud, twice a day.
Yes. Once before bed, once right after waking up. And as you read it, Hill says you have to see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money. You have to inject emotion into it.
That practice, the repetition, the emotion, that leads right into his next big idea, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Faith, the eternal elixir.
It does. And it immediately brings up that big question for a lot of people. Okay, fine, but how do you get faith? How do you have it? Hill points out, very shrewdly, that many philosophies or religions tell you to have faith, but they don't often tell you how. His assertion is bold. Faith is a state of mind, and it may be induced by self-suggestion. You can cultivate it.
Self-suggestion. So basically programming your own mind.
That's a good way to put it. Hill describes it as the principle where you come to believe whatever you repeatedly tell yourself, whether it's initially true or not. He says, quite profoundly, every man is what he is because of the dominating thoughts which he permits to occupy his mind. And thoughts, especially when they're mixed with strong emotion, they aren't passive. They become these powerful forces that drive action and literally shape your reality.
And to make that practical, he gives a formula, the self-confidence formula.
Yes, a really powerful, comprehensive statement designed to be memorized, repeated daily, to build that faith and self-belief systematically. It starts. First, I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, continuous action toward its attainment, and I here and now promise to render such action. Right away, it establishes capability and commitment.
Okay, then the second point.
Second, I realize the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Therefore, I will concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to become, thereby creating in my mind a clear mental picture of that person. That's about mental rehearsal, building the identity you want.
30 minutes daily, wow. Okay. Third.
Third, I know through the principle of autosuggestion, any desire that I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of attaining the object back of it. Therefore, I will devote 10 minutes daily to demanding of myself the development of self-confidence. This directly links holding the desire to building the confidence needed.
And fourth, ties back to the definite aim.
Exactly. Fourth, I have clearly written down a description of my definite chief aim in life, and I will never stop trying until I shall have developed sufficient self-confidence for its attainment. Reinforces the goal and links it to relentless perseverance.
Okay, and the fifth point sounds pretty comprehensive. It brings in ethics.
It does. It adds this crucial ethical and collaborative layer. Fifth, I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. I will succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to use and the cooperation of other people.
So it's not just about getting, it's about giving and cooperation.
Precisely. It continues. I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. I will eliminate hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism by developing love for all humanity because I know that a negative attitude toward others can never bring me success. I will cause others to believe in me because I will believe in them and in myself.
Powerful stuff. And you're meant to sign it and repeat it daily.
Yes, sign it, repeat it aloud daily with full faith. The idea is to completely saturate your subconscious with these principles.
There's another story about faith, right? The preacher needing $1 million? Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes, another fantastic example. He had this big idea for a college, needed $1 million, a huge sum then. He'd been thinking about it for almost 2 years, just thinking. No real action. Then he hits this turning point. He makes a definite, absolute decision to get the money within 1 week.
Wow. From 2 years of thinking to 1 week.
Exactly. He didn't know how, but the decision was made. The what was fixed. With that new resolve, he decided to preach a sermon titled, What I Would Do If I Had $1 Million.
And something happened during the sermon.
Something remarkable. He said this strange feeling of assurance came over him. It was so strong he completely forgot his notes. He just spoke from the heart, from his subconscious, really, and the result. Within 36 hours, the entire $1 million was pledged, just like that.
Incredible.
Hill uses this to hammer home that point. The subconscious mind needs thoughts well mixed with emotion or feeling. Plain words, cold logic. They don't cut it. Faith, that deep conviction, is the strongest and most productive of the emotions.
And this whole idea that wealth starts with an idea, boosted by emotion, driven by action, it feels very current, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially in our knowledge economy.
Absolutely. Intangible assets, vision, belief, they're paramount today. Hill was really ahead of his time in emphasizing the power of thought itself as the starting point for all riches.
Okay, so we have burning desire, unwavering faith.
Yeah.
What are the actual tools Hill says we need to use to turn intention into reality? This is where specialized knowledge and imagination come in, right? And he has some maybe surprising things to say about both.
He really does. He starts by drawing the sharp line between two types of knowledge. There's general knowledge stuff you learn in school, maybe trivia, which he says is frankly of little use for accumulating money.
Ouch.
And then there's specialized knowledge. And here's his big point, the one that really challenges how we often think about education. Knowledge is only potential power. It only becomes real power when and if it is organized into definite plans of action and directed to a definite end.
So just knowing stuff isn't enough.
Not at all. He calls this the missing link in education. Schools teach facts, but often fail to teach how to organize those facts, how to apply them strategically towards a goal. Accumulating degrees doesn't automatically equal success unless you apply that knowledge intentionally.
Which brings us to that famous Henry Ford story, the ignorance trial.
Yes, a perfect illustration. Ford, this industrial giant, gets called an ignorant pacifist in court. The lawyers try to trip him up, prove his ignorance. They ask him things like, who is Benedict Arnold? How many soldiers did the British send over in 1776? You know, trivia.
And Ford's response was brilliant, wasn't it?
Classic. He basically said, look, if I really needed to answer that silly question or any question, I have a row of electric push buttons on my desk. Push a button, summon an expert who can answer it. His genius wasn't knowing everything himself. It was knowing how to access and organize the knowledge he needed through others.
So you don't have to know it all personally.
Exactly. And Hill pairs Ford with Thomas Edison, who only had 3 months of formal schooling. Both became incredibly successful. It just underlines Hill's point. Specialized knowledge is among the most plentiful and the cheapest forms of service which may be had. The key isn't possessing it all in your own head. It's knowing how to acquire it, organize it, apply it often, he emphasizes, through your mastermind group.
And how do you acquire it? He gives practical ways.
He does. He says you can purchase it. Through your own experience, obviously. Through cooperation with others, especially your mastermind. Through formal education, colleges. Through libraries, huge resources. And through specialized training sources. He particularly liked night schools and home study programs.
Why home study? That seems counterintuitive today, maybe.
Well, he had this view, maybe a bit controversial, about free education. He felt anything obtained without cost or effort is often undervalued. People don't appreciate free schools or libraries enough, he thought, whereas home study correspondence schools, because you paid for them, they demanded more.
More self-discipline.
Exactly. More discipline, decisiveness, promptness, action, and the crucial habit of finishing what you start, because you paid whether you got good grades or not. He argued these were vital leadership qualities. He even shared his own story of being forced to finish an advertising course he'd paid for, which later proved incredibly valuable.
And the Depression actually forced people into this, didn't it? Learning new skills.
Paradoxically, yes. The hardship forced adaptation. Hill gives great examples. There was Stuart Austin Weir, an engineer, over 40, married. Depression hits his field hard. What does he do? Decides to completely switch careers. To law.
Wow, starting over at 40 during the Depression.
Takes specialized courses, crams a 4-year law degree into just 2 years, and armed with that new specialized knowledge, he builds a successful, lucrative corporation law practice, thriving even then.
Amazing resilience. And there was another story. The bookkeeper.
Yes. The unemployed bookkeeping salesman.
Yeah.
Had some experience, but no job. So he takes an accounting course, learns modern methods and equipment. Then the really innovative part. He starts a bookkeeping office on wheels, targeting small merchants who couldn't afford a full-time accountant but desperately needed help.
Brilliant idea.
It took off, grew into a fleet of these mobile offices, huge staff, providing essential services cheaply. And Hill notes incredibly that in 1 year, this guy paid almost 10 times the income tax his former employer paid. All started with an idea Hill himself apparently gave him.
So specialized knowledge plus imagination. That was the key.
Those were the ingredients, exactly. Which brings us to imagination itself. Hill calls it the workshop of the mind. He says, pretty boldly, that man's only limitation, within reason, is how well he develops and uses his imagination, and he breaks it down into 2 types.
Okay, what are they?
First, there's synthetic imagination. This is where you take existing ideas, concepts, plans, and just rearrange them into new combinations. It doesn't create anything fundamentally new. It works with the material you already have from experience, education, observation. Most inventors, most entrepreneurs use this primarily.
Okay, rearranging existing pieces. What's the other type?
That's creative imagination. And this, Hill describes as something much more profound, almost mysterious. He calls it the receiving set for hunches and inspirations. A direct line, he suggests, to infinite intelligence.
Infinite intelligence.
Yeah.
Like a universal source.
That's the idea. He posits this is where all truly basic or new ideas come from, or insights, or even receiving thought vibrations from others, or connecting with your own subconscious. And crucially, he says this creative faculty works best when your mind is vibrating really rapidly, often fueled by that strong emotionalized desire we talked about.
And it gets stronger with use.
He believes so, like a muscle. The more you use and trust your creator imagination, the more receptive and powerful it becomes.
Which leads to that wild story about Coca-Cola.
Mm.
The enchanted kettle.
Yes. A fantastic story. Whether literally true in all details or not, it's a powerful analogy for how imagination plus an idea can change everything. Starts with the poor country doctor selling a secret formula, an old kettle and a wooden paddle, for just $500.
Which was a clerk's life savings.
Right. The clerk buys these simple things, but then here's the turning point Hill highlights. The clerk added an ingredient of which the doctor knew nothing.
And that ingredient was?
Imagination, plus faith, plus desire. The clerk added those intangible principles to the tangible formula.
And that combination?
Exploded. It produced vast fortunes of gold. Think about it. Consumed tons of sugar, needed millions of bottles, employed armies of people, transformed a whole city into a business hub. And importantly, that business kept going, kept employing people right through the Depression when so many others failed. It shows how a small seed, nurtured by these principles, can create massive, lasting value.
So that mysterious ingredient the clerk added, it wasn't chemical, it was mental.
Exactly. It points right back to the core principles. Definite purpose, burning desire, unwavering faith, the formula, the kettle. They were just potential. It was the application of these forces that ignited everything. Hill was passionate about this. He argued the world needs practical dreamers, people who don't just have ideas, but who will act on them decisively.
Like Ford dreaming of a horseless carriage, Edison dreaming of electric light.
Right. They faced thousands of so-called failures, but they persisted because the dream was real to them. Hill puts it so simply. The greatest achievement was, at first and for a time, but a dream. And even more beautifully, dreams are the seedlings of reality.
Okay. So you have the idea, the dream, the desire, the faith. How do you actually make it happen? This is where planning and persistence come in, right? Organized planning.
Yes, and Hill is very clear. Plans need to be more than just good. They need to be ideally faultless in their execution. Strive for perfection in the planning.
And central to that planning is the mastermind principle again.
Absolutely essential, he repeats. You must ally yourself with a group, people whose combined skills, experience, knowledge, imagination, everything you need will help you create and execute your plan. And critically, you have to figure out what you offer them in return. Benefits, advantages. Because nobody works indefinitely for nothing, whether it's money or something else.
You can't do it alone, basically.
That's his core argument for big success. No individual has sufficient experience, education, native ability, and knowledge to ensure the accumulation of a great fortune without the cooperation of other people. Simple as that.
And ideally, he says, every major plan should be a joint creation. Checked, approved, refined by the whole mastermind group. Leverage that collective brainpower.
What about when plans fail? Because they do. He talks about temporary defeat.
He reframes it powerfully. Temporary defeat isn't failure of the person. It's a signal that there is something wrong with your plan.
So fix the plan, not blame yourself. Exactly. He points to Edison again. 10,000 temporary defeats before the light bulb worked. What do? You rebuild the plan. Learn from what went wrong. Set sail again, but smarter this time. His mantra for this is just pure resolve. A quitter never wins and a winner never quits. End of story.
And good planning requires good leadership. He lists leadership traits.
He does. 10 major attributes he saw as essential. Let's see. Definite purpose, clear vision, unwavering self-control, a keen sense of justice-iness, definiteness of decision-making calls, definiteness of plans, planning the work, working the plan.
Okay, 5 down.
Right. 6th, the habit of doing more than paid for giving extra value. 7th, a pleasing personality makes people want to cooperate. 8th, sympathy and understanding. 9th, mastery of detail, knowing what's going on. And 10th, willingness to assume full responsibility for everything, including followers' mistakes. No buck passing.
That last one is huge, taking responsibility.
It is, and what's really interesting is how he connected these traits to a future he envisioned. He talked about a coming new era of relationship between leaders and followers. He predicted a shift away from leadership by force and fear, which he said just crushed people's spirits towards leadership based on mutual cooperation, fair profit sharing.
That sounds very modern. Radical for his time.
Totally radical. He actually predicted the future watchword would be human happiness and contentment as the role of business. Amazing foresight.
He also lists reasons why leaders fail, doesn't he? The flip side.
Yes, 10 major causes of failure in leadership. Things like inability to organize details getting bogged down, unwillingness to do humble service thinking you're above it, expecting pay for just knowing instead of focusing on action.
What else?
Fear of competition from followers, so you don't train anyone, limiting everyone, lack of imagination, selfishness, intemperance, lack of discipline and personal habits, disloyalty, relying too much on the authority of the position leading by fear, and emphasizing title over substance. True leaders don't need a fancy title.
So beyond planning and leadership, there's persistence, just sheer grit.
Persistence. He calls it an essential factor. It's the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. You need it to build belief. And he observes, pretty bluntly, that most people just give up. First sign of trouble, first bit of opposition, they're out. But the few who make it big, the Fords, Carnegies, Rockefellers, and Edisons, they're the ones who have this persistence.
He calls lack of persistence a common weakness.
A weakness common to the majority of men, he says, but crucially, it may be overcome by effort. And the strength of your persistence depends directly on the intensity of your desire. Remember that burning desire.
Weak desires bring weak results.
Exactly. Weak desires, weak persistence, weak results. It's all connected.
He even has this idea of a hidden guide, testing people.
Yeah, it's an intriguing concept. He suggests there might be some force, some hidden guide, whose job is to test us through tough times, discouragement, and only those who pick themselves up after defeat and keep on trying, only they pass the persistence test, he implies.
He gives examples of people who passed, right? Fannie Hurst.
Incredible story. Fannie Hurst, the writer, got 36 rejection slips from the Saturday Evening Post. 36.
Most people would quit after 3.
Right. But she kept at it for 4 years, finally broke the ice, got published, went on to make a fortune, including, get this, $100,000 just for the movie rights to one novel, Great Laughter. Persistence paid off, literally.
And Keith Smith, the singer.
Another great one. Early on, she just sang everywhere she could, for free, without money and without price, as Hill puts it, just honing her craft, getting heard. She kept doing this until basically the Broadway power brokers just threw up their hands. They said, what's the use? You don't know when you're whipped, so name your price and go to work in earnest.
She wore them down.
Exactly. Her persistence forced them to recognize her talent. And she named a price where 1 week's pay was more than most people made in a year back then.
And the most amazing example he uses is Muhammad.
It's a striking example, yes. Hill points out he was initially ridiculed, banished, had no formal education, didn't even start his mission until he was 40. After 10 years of preaching, all he had was banishment, poverty, and ridicule. This seems like total failure.
But he didn't quit.
He did not quit. Within another 10 years, through sheer, unbelievable persistence and will, he became the ruler of all Arabia, head of a major world religion. Hill admits his career never made sense in conventional logic, but his persistence was just astounding. It showed, for Hill, the power of words, prayer, belief, and that relentless drive.
So beyond leadership failure, he lists other general reasons people fail.
A whole list. Lack of a definite purpose, just drifting. Lack of ambition. Not enough education, meaning specialized, applicable knowledge. Lack of self-discipline, a huge one. Also, ill health, bad environment, procrastination, the killer of dreams. Lack of persistence, obviously. Negative personality, lack of controlled sexual urge, we'll get to that. Uncontrolled desire for something for nothing. Gambling, shortcuts.
Waiting for the perfect moment.
Right. Neglecting to move on ideas, waiting too long, wishing instead of willing, compromising with poverty, accepting it, searching for shortcuts, trying to get without giving. And a big one he highlights, fear of criticism.
That fear of what other people think.
He says it's insidious, often hiding in your subconscious, just quietly stopping you from creating plans or acting on them because you're worried what others will think or say.
Which ties into another key thing, decision, making choices.
Absolutely. Leaders, he states flatly, decide quickly and firmly. Indecision. He sees it as a habit, often learned young, maybe even reinforced by education systems that don't push for decisiveness. He makes this stark claim. 98 out of every 100 people working for wages today are in the positions they hold because they lacked the definiteness of decision to plan a definite position for themselves. They just drifted into jobs.
Wow. So the lesson from history, he's saying, is that big world-changing decisions like Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation or the guy signing the Declaration of Independence, they always required massive courage, risking everything.
Exactly. Those 56 signers of the Declaration literally put their lives and fortunes on the line with that one decision. His point is, your own economic freedom, your own fulfillment, it's also at stake if you lack that decisiveness.
So how do you get better at deciding? What's his advice?
It's pretty straightforward. Avoid opinions. He calls them the cheapest commodities on earth. Everyone has one. Instead, quietly gather facts. Base your decisions on information, not just what people are saying or what you guess. His advice: keep your eyes and ears wide open and your mouth closed. Listen more, talk less, observe, then decide firmly.
Okay, this next part feels like it gets into some really interesting, maybe even stranger territory. Hill moves beyond the tangible stuff into these intangible forces, things like the mastermind, the subconscious, even something called the sixth sense. This sounds intriguing.
It is. He really believed these were crucial for the highest levels of achievement. He starts by stating a basic truth: power is essential for success. But clarifies it's not brute force, it's organized and intelligently directed knowledge. And how do you get that power? Through organized effort. Specifically, 2 or more people working together in harmony towards a definite goal.
The mastermind again.
Yeah.
But he breaks it down. Economic and psychic phases.
Yes. The economic feature is the more obvious part. Strategically surrounding yourself with people whose advice, counsel, cooperation you need, people willing to help wholeheartedly in harmony. He says nearly every great fortune was built on this kind of alliance. Carnegie's group of about 50 men is his prime example. Carnegie credited his entire fortune to them, and that's the practical business synergy.
Okay, but the psychic phase, that sounds more abstract.
It is, and quite profound. Hill actually claims no 2 minds ever come together without thereby creating a third invisible, intangible force, which may be likened to a third mind.
The third mind, created by the group.
That's his theory. When individual brains coordinate in harmony, he argues, the increased mental energy created by that alliance becomes available to every single person in the group. It's like the collective mental power gets amplified and shared.
So the group mind is more powerful than the sum of its parts.
That's exactly the idea. He points to Henry Ford again, says Ford's real breakthroughs accelerated after he became close friends with Edison. And his biggest achievements came after expanding that circle to include Harvey Firestone, John Burroughs, Luther Burbank, other great minds. Hill believed Ford, despite limited schooling, literally absorbed their thought vibrations, added their intelligence, experience, spiritual forces to his own.
Wow. And this mastermind, at its best, connects to infinite intelligence.
Hill believed so. That a harmonized group mind could become a direct channel to this ultimate source of power, wisdom, creativity. Pretty deep concept.
Okay, then there's the subconscious mind. He calls it the connecting link.
Yes, the link between our conscious mind and that infinite intelligence. He describes it as this field of consciousness that records every thought impulse coming in through our 5 senses. But critically, it acts first and most strongly on our dominating desires, which have been mixed with emotional feelings, such as faith. Emotion is key.
But it records negative thoughts, too.
Yeah.
Fear.
Poverty. It does. It functions voluntarily, he says. So fear thoughts, poverty thoughts, they also act as stimuli unless you consciously choose to feed it more desirable food, positive, emotionally charged thoughts. It responds way more to emotion than to cold logic.
And it's the go-between for prayers, or communicating with infinite intelligence.
That's how he sees it. The subconscious is the intermediary. It takes your deep desires, your prayers, translates them into terms infinite intelligence recognizes, sends the message out, and then it brings back the answer maybe as a definite plan, an idea, a hunch, an inspiration.
He uses radio analogy.
Yeah, like radio waves. Our thoughts are like sound waves. They need to be stepped up, emotionalized, to be broadcast effectively through the ether between minds, which he insists is very much alive with thought vibrations. And the creative imagination, or the sixth sense, acts as the receiving set for those incoming answers or ideas.
Okay, this is fascinating. Which brings us to maybe the most surprising principle for many. Sex transmutation. He calls it the creative energy of genius.
It's definitely one of his most intriguing and perhaps controversial points. He argues that the sex drive is, without question, the most powerful human desire, the most impelling. But, he says, when this incredibly potent energy is consciously harnessed and redirected along other lines, channeled away from purely physical expression into other pursuits, it becomes an extraordinary creative force.
So redirecting that energy fuels creativity.
That's his claim. He says this transmuted energy drives exceptional keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and creative ability in whatever field you focus it on.
And he claims this is backed by research.
He does. He asserts that his research showed the men of greatest achievement are men with highly developed sex natures, men who have learned the art of sex transmutation. He also claims most men who built great fortunes were fundamentally motivated by the influence of a woman. and flatly states, sex energy is the creative energy of all genii.
He even gives an age range for peak creativity.
Yes, very specifically. He says few people hit their highly creative stride before age 40, and the peak is often between 40 and 60. This reflects his idea of learning to harness and redirect this powerful natural force as one matures.
But he adds a condition, right, about love.
A crucial one. When sex desire is combined with the higher emotion of love, he says it brings calmness of purpose, poise, accuracy of judgment, and balance. It refines the energy. But without love, actions driven purely by sex can become disorganized, distorted, and totally destructive. Chaos instead of creation.
And he mentions the influence of women again.
Yes, he doubles down on that. Man's greatest motivating force is his desire to please woman, he declares. And this, he says, gives women immense power to make or break a man. Men might not admit it, he observes, but smart women recognize this manly trait and can tactfully use it to inspire great things.
Okay, so desire, faith, knowledge, imagination, planning, persistence, mastermind, subconscious, sex transmutation. That leads us finally to the sixth sense.
The sixth sense. The door to the temple of wisdom. He calls it the 13th principle, the very apex of the philosophy. He's clear. You can only really grasp and use this principle after you've mastered all the others. It builds on everything else.
And what is it exactly?
He essentially equates it with the creative imagination, that receiving set we talked about. It's the faculty through which infinite intelligence can communicate voluntarily directly with you, giving you hunches, flashes of inspiration, warnings maybe.
He had a personal practice for developing this, the invisible counselors.
Yes, a really striking personal exercise. He describes holding these nightly council meetings in his imagination. He'd convene these imaginary figures, historical giants like Emerson, Paine, Edison, Darwin, Lincoln, Burbank, Napoleon, Ford, Carnegie. Wow.
What was he doing in these meetings?
His stated goal was to rebuild his own character. He wanted to absorb their best traits, courage, persistence, wisdom, whatever, through focused autosuggestion, by talking with them. He said over time, these figures became apparently real to him. They developed personalities in his mind.
He even talked to the real Edison about it.
He did. He apparently described this practice to Edison, who was still alive then. And Edison, according to Hill, told him, your dream was more a reality than you may imagine it to have been, kind of validating the process.
So what was really going on there? Conscious self-programming, tapping into something bigger.
It seems like a combination. He was definitely doing intense self-programming, but he also clearly believed he was genuinely tapping into some form of collective or universal intelligence. It sounds mystical, maybe, but he presented it as a practical tool for character building, problem solving, getting insights beyond normal thinking, accessing knowledge not available through the ordinary rate of vibration of thought, as he put it.
And this is for people seeking more than just money.
Yes. He says this principle helps you overcome discouragement, master fear, beat procrastination, and draw freely on your imagination for deeper guidance. It's about wisdom, not just wealth.
Okay, so if these principles are so powerful, why do so many people still struggle? Why do they get stuck? Hill blames fear and negative influences.
He sees them as huge roadblocks, paralyzing forces. He identifies 6 basic fears, says everyone suffers from some combination. Most people probably struggle with all 6 at times.
What's the first one? Poverty?
Fear of poverty. He calls it the most destructive and most difficult to master. Thinks it comes from our history of economic competition, preying on each other. Poverty brings suffering and humility, he says bluntly, and reminds us money makes a difference in self-respect. This fear can just stop you before you even start.
Number 2, fear of criticism. That sounds familiar.
Very common. He says it robs man of his initiative, destroys his power of imagination, limits his individuality, takes away his self-reliance, does damage in countless ways. It keeps people in bad situations, unhappy marriages, dead-end jobs, stops them getting education because they fear being seen as too ambitious, makes them afraid to take risks in business because what if they fail publicly? Hill admitted facing this himself when Carnegie gave him his big mission.
Okay, third fear, ill health.
Fear of ill health, often linked to fear of old age and death. He notes it can manifest as hypochondria, where the fear itself actually produces physical symptoms, a self-fulfilling prophecy. And he points out, critically, how much the patent medicine industry profits from this deep-seated fear.
Fourth, fear of loss of love. That sounds painful.
He calls it the most painful of all, says it can even lead to permanent insanity. It's rooted in jealousy, suspicion, constantly finding fault in relationships, or trying to buy love instead of earning it.
Fifth, Fear of old age. Why are people afraid of getting old, according to Hill?
Mainly, he thinks it's the fear of poverty in old age, dependence, helplessness, also fueled by what he calls false, cruel teachings about hellfire, making people dread the end. Plus, the fear of losing physical attractiveness, especially related to sex. But Hill counters this, arguing that the years between 40 and 60 are often the most productive and useful, challenging that idea of inevitable decline.
And the final one, number 6, fear of death.
The cruelest of all, he labels it, often tied to religious fanaticism, those unanswered questions about what happens next. But he offers some hope here, too, saying science is helping free people from this fear by understanding life as energy which can't be destroyed, only transformed. A more rational view of mortality.
Beyond those 6, he had the 7th, negative influences.
Yes, the 7th basic evil, susceptibility to negative influences. He thinks this is even more dangerous, more often fatal than the 6 fears combined. Why? Because it's so subtle, often completely undetected. It can come from people close to you, relatives, friends, or just from your own negative mental attitude. He calls it as deadly as poison to your ambition.
So successful people guard against this.
Absolutely. Great minds always protect themselves against this evil, he declares, while the unsuccessful, the poverty-stricken, never do. It comes down to taking absolute control of your thoughts, guarding your mind like a precious spiritual estate. He warns there's no legal protection against people poisoning your mind with negativity, whether they mean to or not. It's up to you to build your defenses.
And how do you build those defenses? How do you guard against it?
Look at the examples he gives. Edison ignoring everyone who said he couldn't invent the light bulb. Woolworth ignoring those who said his 5 and dime stores would fail spectacularly. Ford ignoring the scoffers when he was building his first car. What did they all do? They made a deliberate, conscious choice to not let the negativity in. They shut it out.
Self-discipline again. Habit.
Rigorous self-discipline. Cultivated habit. Keep your mind laser-focused on your definite purpose, filled with positive, emotionally charged thoughts. Leave no room for the poison to take root. And because you now have the master key, his philosophy, Hill says, all those old alibis, those if I only had excuses. Money, education, health, time, luck, they're obsolete. No more excuses.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. How does all this grand philosophy translate into, the real world?
Right.
Getting a job, making a living. He talks about marketing personal services.
He does, and it's remarkably forward-thinking for his time, especially writing during the Depression. He argues that the economic crisis made it absolutely necessary to find newer and better ways to market yourself. The old ways just weren't working anymore.
And he saw the employer-employee relationship changing into a partnership.
A fundamental shift. He predicted the future relationship wouldn't be adversarial, but a true partnership, not just between employer and employee, but including the public they both serve. He declared the old public be damned attitude was finished, passé. He used examples. Rude meter readers, impolite train conductors. That kind of poor service ultimately cost businesses customers and jobs. Public perception mattered economically.
He talked about go-getters versus go-givers.
Yes. He said the aggressive go-getter with high-pressure tactics was being replaced by the go-giver, someone who leads by providing value first. Business, he predicted, would increasingly rely not on pressure, but on courtesy and service.
And just doing the job wasn't enough. The attitude mattered.
Critically important. Quality and quantity of work, not sufficient on their own. It's the spirit you bring, agreeable, harmonious, cooperative, that determines your value, your price, and how long you last. He uses Carnegie again. Carnegie apparently wouldn't keep anyone, no matter how good their work, if they couldn't work harmoniously with the team. That spirit was paramount.
This focus on service seems to influence his job-seeking advice, too. He didn't like starting at the bottom.
No, he challenged that conventional wisdom head-on, argued too many people start at the bottom and just stay there, never get seen by opportunity. He felt the outlook from the bottom is not so very bright or encouraging, that it tends to kill off ambition.
So what did he suggest?
Start 1 or 2 steps above the bottom, if you can. Get yourself in a position where you can actually see opportunities, learn how things work higher up, start forming the habit of looking for chances, not just doing the grunt work.
And he had a specific strategy for getting the job you really want. 7 steps.
A very detailed, proactive strategy. Not just finding a job, but getting the exact position you desire. Step 1. Decide exactly what job you want. Be specific. Even if it doesn't exist yet, define it. Step 2. Choose the specific company or person you want to work for. Target them.
Okay. Then research.
Step 3. Study that employer thoroughly. Policies, people, potential for advancement. Know them inside out. Step 4, analyze yourself. What specific value can you offer them? Advantages, services, ideas you bring.
Step 5 sounds like a big mindset shift.
It is. Step 5, forget about a job. Forget whether or not there is an opening. Concentrate on what you can give. Frame it entirely around the value you provide, not what you need.
Then you write it down, like a proposal.
Step 6, yes, get your plan, your value proposition written down professionally, neatly, clearly, compellingly. He calls it a brief. Step 7, present that brief directly to the person with the authority to hire. Bypass the usual channels if you can.
In this brief, it's like a sales pitch for yourself.
Exactly. Prepared like a lawyer's case brief. It should include your qualifications, experience, references, maybe a photo. But most importantly, it must clearly state why you are the person for that specific position, detailing the value you'll bring.
He even suggests working for free initially, on probation.
A radical idea, definitely. Offer to work for a week, a month, whatever it takes without pay, just to prove your value. He admits it sounds extreme, but says it seldom fails to win at least a trial. Shows incredible confidence. And often, he notes, you end up getting paid for that probation period anyway.
Plus, research the business itself. Show you're interested in them.
Absolutely. Know their business, their industry. It shows imagination, genuine interest in their success, not just your own paycheck.
And he tells a story about a woman who used this to help her son.
Remarkable story. She created this personal service sales plan for her son, following these principles. It not only got him a junior executive role, but allowed him to basically name his own starting salary. Hill estimates it saved him no less than 10 years on the career ladder, and the mother turned it into a business. Helping others market themselves this way, taking a percentage of their increased earnings, proves the principle works.
And he'll believe this whole philosophy was perfectly suited for America, the American opportunity.
He did. Even writing in the depths of the Depression, he grounded everything in the unique freedoms he saw in the United States. Freedom of thought and deed. He lists them out. Freedom of thought, education, religion, politics, choosing your profession, owning property, where you live, who you marry, equal opportunity, travel, food.
Oh.
All fundamental.
He uses a breakfast example.
Yeah.
The dime breakfast.
Yeah, it's a vivid illustration. A couple in Times Square, NYC, during the Depression. Their breakfast includes juice from Florida, wheat from Kansas, tea from China, bananas from South America, eggs from Utah, sugar from Cuba, dairy from New England, all for just 10 cents each, including taxes. His point: look at the incredible hidden infrastructure, the organized capital, the global coordination required to make that simple, cheap meal possible. These are the unseen blessings of the system.
He had a specific view on capitalists, didn't he, as brains of civilization?
He did. He argued that organized capital provides the essential framework, the entire fabric for education, progress, modern life, the machinery, ships, railroads, trained people, everything. He makes a sharp point. Money without brains always is dangerous. Properly used, it is the most important essential of civilization.
But he acknowledges the criticisms of big business.
He does acknowledge the criticisms of Wall Street and big business, but his core assertion remains. America provides all the freedom and all the opportunity to accumulate riches that any honest person may require by rendering useful service. The opportunity is there, he argues, if you focus on giving value.
And this connects to a fundamental law, the law of economics.
Yes, he presents it as an immutable law of nature. No system has ever been created by which men can legally acquire riches through mere force of numbers or without giving in return an equivalent value. You can't just take, there must be exchange. This all-seeing eye, he warns, eventually demands an accounting from those who try to defy it. The Depression itself he viewed as the consequence of society trying to reap without sowing, trying to get something for nothing on a massive scale. He's careful to say he's not arguing for or against any specific group or system, just stating what he sees as a natural, unavoidable law.
Okay, wow. We have covered a lot of ground here. As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the big takeaway? We've gone from burning desire all the way to the sixth sense.
I think if you connect it all, Hill's ultimate message really goes beyond just money. It's about consciously steering your whole life by controlling your thoughts. He keeps coming back to that. You have absolute control over but one thing, and that is your thoughts. He calls it a divine prerogative. The only way, he believed, to truly control your own destiny.
So recapping the journey.
Yeah.
We started with that absolute necessity of a definite burning desire.
Then the power of faith and autosuggestion to actually make thought real.
We looked at specialized knowledge, applied knowledge, and a cultivated imagination as the essential tools.
Right. Then the engine. Organized planning and that relentless persistence. Can't succeed without them.
Plus the amplifying effect of the Mastermind alliance. collective power.
And those more subtle forces, the creative potential in sex transmutation and the intuitive guidance of the sixth sense.
And critically, identifying and conquering those 6 basic fears and guarding against negative influences.
Which all ties into the practical application. Marketing personal services as a partnership, focusing on giving value first, recognizing the opportunities within a system based on giving before getting.
Hill leaves us with a really potent final image, doesn't he? The checkerboard.
He does. It really sticks with you. Life is a checkerboard, and the player opposite you is time. If you hesitate before moving or neglect to move promptly, your men will be wiped off the board by time. You are playing against a partner who will not tolerate indecision. Powerful.
So it makes you ask yourself, what moves are you holding back on your own life's checkerboard? What dreams are just sitting there waiting for action? He'll believe the power to make your life what you want it to be is right there inside you. But only if you actually step up. Play your game with conviction.
Which brings us to that final, really challenging question for you, the listener, to take away. If, as Napoleon Hill passionately argued, your life truly does conform to your deepest beliefs, and if you really do have the power to control your thoughts, then what will you consciously choose to believe? What magnificent life, what definite purpose will you start demanding for yourself starting right now, today? Maybe it's time to revisit those 6 steps for desire and start putting them into practice. The principles are laid out. The next move is yours.
Thanks for tuning in to the Book Summary Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, hit that like button, subscribe for more summaries, and share it with someone who's ready to grow. Want deeper insights, exclusive book notes, and reading tips? Join our free newsletter. The link's in the description. And don't forget, if you'd like to read the full book, our affiliate link is right below. It helps support the channel and keeps the summaries coming. Until next time, keep reading, keep growing.